Hello everyone, my name is Dennis Futrell and my topic of choice was homosexual, transgender, same-sex marriage in the military. A little bit about myself and why I chose to go this route and choose this topic was I myself served in the military for 4 years, and while I don't fit the bill of either three of those topics. I witnessed a lot of those different things going on in the military, and saw how those people were treated, and how they were dealt with in accordance with military code and law. And so that's the main reason why I chose this topic. My paper reviews the complex issue of homosexuals, transgender, and same-sex marriages in the United States military. And in order to understand the problem, I took a look at three disciplines that I thought that would help identify some root causes and preventative actions to resolving the issue that our government and military leaders see today. So the three disciplines that I used were organizational leadership, history, and communication. Now, when you're talking about a subject like this, for one, it's kind of touchy, but two, there are a lot of disciplines that could be used for this research paper. Now, I found that I had to get down to three just for time's sake and just for research sake. As I started this, the disciplines were leading me all over the place, and so I narrowed it down to these three of organizational leadership, history, and communication, and I'll show you how they went. So with my experience, I was able to capture and see for first-hand point of view of how differently these people were being treated in the military, and as a military member, I just felt that was completely unfair. These people fought right next to me. I trusted them. They were my brothers and sisters, and that's kind of why I wanted to write this and explore this a little bit on my own to see what the history was and see, what changes can be made in order to have these, people feel more accepted for who they are and who they choose to be. The LGBT community today is I feel like is getting stronger and stronger. It's becoming more and more accepted, especially with the increase in celebrities that you see coming out and pronouncing their sexual orientation or who they prefer as a partner. And I think that more and more that people do that, the more and more normal people will feel accepted about coming out themselves and proclaiming those statements. During this research, I was able to have the opportunity to interview both a veteran of the United States Air Force as well as a high-ranking Navy official who is currently active duty. So, and he's asked me to kind of not use his name, which I will oblige by. Just to give you a kind of a history or a timeline of the military's policies and actions over the course of 200 years. This all started back in 1789, I believe, when the first airman was or service member was removed from the military for being homosexual. Throughout the years, other people were subjected to court-martial for being homosexual. There were stings involved in order to catch these homosexuals. At one point, military psychiatrists in 1942 even deemed the homosexuals unfit to fight. There was a uniform code of military conduct that was adopted along the way. One of them was Article 125, which forbid, sodomy, and then other policies that were established to dismiss homosexuals, like the Army Regulation 635-200. And now we're approaching the 1980s, where Tech Sergeant from the Air Force was discharged for being homosexual. A couple of years later, another staff sergeant in the Army was being discharged for being homosexual. And in 1981, the DoD issued a Directive 1332-14 stating that homosexuality is incompatible with military service. It wasn't until 1992 that during his presidential campaign, Clinton stated that he would allow all to serve in the military regardless of sexual orientation. And that following year, once he was elected, he actually stated that he would enact the law of don't ask, don't tell, which basically meant that as long as nobody, asked you, then you didn't have to say whether or not you were homosexual or transgender or same-sex marriage or anything like that. During President Obama's presidential campaign, he stated that he would repeal the don't ask, don't tell, and allow all to serve in the military regardless of their sexual orientation. So nobody had to keep it silent. That was in 2007. And in 2013, the U.S. Supreme Court actually ruled to lift the ban on federal employees in same-sex marriages. So you could see as time progressed, and I think as the world as a whole progresses, we become more acceptable to these types of things, and understanding of why people choose to do the things that they do. That was basically in my history portion of the research paper. The communication portion led more towards the types of communication that needs to be provided to the military members and the LGBT community on what they can do to kind of protect themselves, and what they can do, what society as a whole can do to basically accept this and understand this, and know that these types of things are going to happen, and they're fully okay, and they're the commander-in-chief is okay with them, the president of the United States, and if you want to join the military, then you need to be okay with them too. LGBT are just normal citizens like the rest of us, and they shouldn't be treated any differently. And I think communication from the top down will allow for that. There's a lot of different ways that we can explain why certain people choose to do the things that they do. I mean, it's a free country. You can choose and proclaim whatever gender you want, whether you want to be, in love with a man or a woman, regardless of the gender that you are, and whether or not you want to, serve in the military shouldn't be a question in those regards. So the last discipline that I looked at was organizational leadership, and I think organizational leadership and communication kind of tie in together because, like I was saying, it's kind of almost a trickle-down effect. When you have your commander-in-chief and those generals on the same page as far as what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, then I think that'll trickle down to the soldiers, the Marines, the airmen in the Air Force, the cadets in the Navy, and if you have a strong foundation of leadership in place to manage this type of scenario, then it shouldn't be an issue going forward. That's just the role of the superiors in each military organization and how they should be representing the core values of their particular units. And like I said, this includes non-commissioned officers all the way up to the President of the United States of America. So, like I said, I was able to interview a high-ranking officer in the Navy, and I thought it would be good to kind of get his point of view from this topic. And he kind of mirrored what I've been saying during this video of you have to have the right people in place in order to ensure that that standards are being held and that people aren't being discriminated against. And he himself takes that same stance while serving the military actively. And the veteran that I talked to was right along the same page of supporting this, of being on board with this. And if you go around and ask many military members, they're all, majority of them going to tell you the exact same thing. That's just, it's become part of society, and a lot of people recognize that and understand that, and it's still going to be an ongoing issue, just because there's going to be some people that don't necessarily recognize that and don't want to be a part of that. But there's a time and place for them, and they don't need to be serving in our military if that's their stance. So this was a great topic to research. I learned a lot, and I hope in the past 10 minutes you have too. And if not, just feel free to reach out to me via email, and I'll be glad to share my research with you. All right, thank you, and take care. Goodbye.